Let's continue here now. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to close the 9th Eastern Cape ANC Elective Conference tomorrow following delays with verification processes for credentials of delegates attending the conference. The three-day conference was initially planned to end later this evening. SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko joins us now live from East London. Samkele, thank you so much for your time. So I would imagine things are now starting to pick up speed following the very tense start to this conference. Talk to me about what are delegates doing today and what's the latest?
Essentially, delegates now have gone to lunch and they've broken away after the opening of this specific conference on the issues of credentials, which were presented to plenary. As it currently stands, there are over 1,500 voting delegates to this conference, with the OR Tambo region being the biggest with 333 registered delegates. They have presented those credentials, and there were issues with the credentials, and the credentials essentially had to be taken back to the steering committee, which they are currently meeting now to iron them out and clean them out. And then at 3 o'clock, when plenary reconvenes, those credentials will be presented to plenary. But there was also issues around one particular delegate, Andile Lungisa, and the status of Andile Lungisa's membership, saying that he was convicted of that charge that he was charged with within the Nelson Bella Council when he was still a councillor, of hitting someone with a jug, and was incarcerated for about a period of 6 months, as is currently on a parole. So those were the issues, and people saying that once you've been convicted, you have to immediately relinquish all positions of power, and you cannot stand for any positions of leadership within the governing party. They are saying that Andile Lungisa must be removed from this specific plenary on the basis of his incarceration and him being found guilty.
I'd like to move on to other issues, but speak to us about Andile Lungisa. Has he at all managed to say, to give his input in terms of this latest development of him needing to remove himself?
Essentially, that was not a decision. They were deliberating on it, and it further needs to be given some clarity on that particular point. Those who are supporting him did include their points of view, saying that this particular decision by the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress does not affect Andile Lungisa, in their words, as they are saying that he is essentially on parole, and he is so essentially no longer incarcerated and is free and eligible to contest for positions of power. So it's just a matter of interpretations from both perspectives, those supporting Babalo Matikizela and those supporting Oscar Mabuyane. So those are the issues and the interpretation of Andile Lungisa's parole, if it allows him to contest for any positions in the party, that needs further clarity. So those are some of the points that they are raising. You've got Andile Lungisa as well, whom we spoke to earlier on, who raised issues of delegates whom were swapped illegally, delegates whom are here and fraudulently from the Oscar Mabuyane faction, and those are some of the points that all of them are countering against one another. But we will bring in one of the PTT members, Melusa, to further speak on some of the issues that are coming from conference. You've broken away now from plenary. What's going on, and why have the credentials not yet been adopted?
No, the process of the adoption of credentials is moving very smoothly. We'll be getting back to plenary. We just had to break for lunch, tie up some issues. Then definitely after lunch we'll be going through the issue of credentials.
Why has it taken you so long? It's 3 days now that you've not yet adopted credentials. This takes you back to that 4-day conference where Stony Sezane, the former provincial chair, was elected. Why has it taken you so long to adopt credentials? Because in essence, conference has not started.
I think the main issue is patience, that we have to exercise patience. You'll recall that a conference is a culmination of the work of branch general meetings that have got their own issues in numbers. So when dealing with credentials, you have to be very patient to ensure that you leave no stone unturned on each and every single branch in the province. So that is why it has taken so long, but it's a worthwhile investment for the conference, definitely.
What is then the process? Because essentially you've not yet gone to commissions to discuss policy issues. You've not yet even elected or even nominated positions of the top 5. What is your program going forward? What do you then do now when you come back after lunch? And if credentials, and how long will it take for you to adopt those credentials?
The process of engaging with credentials definitely can take in excess of 1 hour from coming back from lunch. Then from there, the program of the conference will proceed well as planned. No alterations will be made in terms of the content. So all the business of conference will be undertaken without any alterations.
So in essence, after lunch, you will find you will have consensus on the credentials, or you will vote upon for the adoption of the credentials?
Yes, there has to be practically both, because as much as we have to discuss and have consensus on them, but we also, for technical purposes, test the numerical strength of that view.
So in essence, that will be the test of whom is ahead when it comes to conference between Babalo Matigizela and Oscar Mamboyane through the credentials?
Not necessarily, because what if both parties agree that the credentials are genuine? So it will be unanimous, but it will still not mean that there's no contest. So it won't mean that.
Thank you very much. That is one of the PTT members, Mr. Melusi, who is speaking on the issue of credentials and saying that after lunch, it won't take more than an hour to adopt the credentials, which are now currently being cleaned out. As you can see, some of the delegates are already trickling in and going into plenary, for which they say for credentials after lunch, it won't take more than an hour. And particularly once they are done with the adoption of credentials, that's when we will be called back in for the nominations to officially begin. Once nominations are done with, they will then prepare the ballot paper, and during the commissions that will be scheduled to take place after the nominations, that is when each region will be called to come and vote upon, and we will know by the end of today whom are the elected officials of the Eastern Cape province, with the ANC president, the #1 member of the African National Congress, Cyril Ramaphosa, expected to come and close this conference tomorrow.
I certainly hope so, Samkele. Thank you so much for that update. We'll definitely get back to you in an hour or so for more details to see if they indeed have managed to go through those credentials. Essentially, what was on the agenda today, high on the agenda, was dealing with those policy issues and, of course, adoption of credentials and essentially electing of the new provincial leadership and at the very least the top 5. But we'll certainly keep you up to breast in terms of what is happening in East London in as far as that elective conference is concerned.